Thank you so much for joining us today for the Emotional Resilience series. We have two mental health professionals with us today, Samantha Domingo and Roz Kalb. Thank you so much for being here. Today, they're going to speak about maintaining balance and intimacy in an evolving relationship. We would like to invite you to also check out the rest of the Emotional Resilience series. Here are the 5 topics here. For each topic, we have a webinar and an associated toolkit. The toolkits include conversation starters, steps for proactive problem solving, and helpful resources. And now I have the honor of turning the presentation over to our speakers.
Hi, everybody. I'm Roz Kalb, and I'm a clinical psychologist and a senior programs consultant with Can Do MS. And very, very excited to be here today to talk about this topic with my friend and colleague, Sam Domingo. We're looking forward to this.
Same here. Hi, everybody. I'm Sam Domingo. I'm also a psychologist. I'm board certified in behavioral sleep medicine, and I have been working with Can Do as a consultant for the past 2 years. So I'm very much looking forward to talking to you guys about this topic and spending the next half hour with you.
Great. So here's what Sam and I are hoping all of the participants and support partners viewing this webinar will learn. We want all of you to be able to explain why MS often requires people to do things very differently than they've ever done them before, having to be creative and flexible and adapt. Identify and define the values that give their lives meaning. Be able to define a balanced relationship. What does it mean when people are in a healthy, balanced relationship? And list 2 ways to maintain balance. Define key aspects of intimacy. What does it mean to be intimate? And the role that communication plays in helping couples maintain intimacy. And describe at least 3 ways that MS can impact sexual functioning. So, all relationships evolve over time. And when they evolve with MS as a player in that relationship, the evolution is even more complicated and sometimes more challenging. We know that in order for people to maintain strong and satisfying relationships, they need to be able to be flexible and creative in their problem solving, and also communicative with each other, because it's that communication that helps people do the problem solving they need to do. It depends on your ability to align your evolving, growing relationship over time to your individual and shared values. And in a little while, Sam is going to talk to us about exactly what that means. It also means ensuring that each person in the relationship continues to both give and receive to the partnership. And everybody needs to feel like they're valued contributors in the relationship. That helps to keep it balanced. Now, this evolution may require openness to doing old activities in new ways, or exploring totally new activities that you've never done before, either individually or as a couple. So, Sam, could you now help us understand what we mean when we talk about values and what role they play in evolving relationships?
Absolutely. I think we hear this word values thrown around and we're like, well, what does that mean exactly in relationships and emotional well-being? So values can be defined as the priorities, qualities, or activities that give our life meaning. So what's important to you both as an individual and as a couple? What matters in your relationship? What are some of the things that drew you to each other when you first met? And what are some of the things that keep you connected? That's what we mean by values. So We know that each individual person's values may be slightly different within the relationship, but we also know that sharing a common set of core values can lay a strong foundation for a long-lasting relationship and a satisfying relationship. So some examples might be adventure or passion, spontaneity, humanity, contributing to your community. Some values, of course, are going to be more important than others, just kind of right off the bat. And then these values might shift priorities over time, depending on what's going on in your life, what kind of experiences you have. But there are a certain set of core values that tend to kind of draw people together. So you can think of things like your faith or your cultural background, or how you want to raise kids, or whether you want to raise kids. These kinds of things are the connecting dots. So you may have different tastes in what your hobbies are. So one of you may like knitting, like my husband does, and the other might be a music file, like me. So that doesn't mean that we don't share a set of core values that we kind of agree on, and that are kind of like the template for our life together and our relationship. So why is this important to know? When we connect with our values, right, our lives are based on what's important to us. They're driven by what matters to us, even in the face of adversity, which when one of the people in the couple has MS, that can be challenged, right? Values are not the same as goals. They're kind of the foundation for how we define goals. And as I mentioned before, the core set of values tend to stay the same over time, but some changes may occur with age or education or experience, right? And the important thing to keep in mind in terms of what values serve in our relationships is that they can serve as our compass. Where do we want to go, right? What's our strategy here? What's our template for how we want to live our lives? One more thing I want to say about this is that when we're disconnected with the things that are important to us, right? Let's say that you're a couple that values adventure, but for whatever reason, you are not able to engage in adventurous activities as much anymore. You may feel a sense of tension or disconnection within the relationship. So the question isn't, oh, let's just go back to being the same adventurous couple we were 20 years ago, but rather, how can we inject adventure in different ways so that we can have the same level of satisfaction in our relationship? So as Krista mentioned, you will have a toolkit associated with all of these webinars. And one activity that might be fun for you to do with your partner is a values exploration activity. When I work with couples, I rarely get the sense that they sit down and have these deep conversations about, hey, these are exactly my values. What are yours? How do we compare? But rather you just kind of know what attracted you to them in the first place, what keeps you together, those kinds of things. But this might be something fun to do. It helps explore what your individual values are and what shared values you have. It helps you reconnect with the things that are important to you, but maybe haven't thought about recently. It also helps you carve out time together to figure out what's important to you and what brings your life meaning together, but also how to translate it into the day-to-day. So maybe you're not able to be adventurous every single day, right? But how can you inject adventure, every once in a while in a way that helps you feel satisfied? It also helps you live your life with MS, but we're not solely focused on MS. So MS doesn't take up the whole conversation. This is a part of the pie, a piece of the pie, as we've talked about before, but it's not the whole thing. So you can find this activity in the toolkit, and I strongly recommend you do this, not just once, but, a few years from now or even next year, because it's also nice to compare where you are now to where you might be in the future. So speaking of MS being a big piece of the pie here, what happens when MS challenges your values, right? So we may hear things from folks saying, like I mentioned, our spirit of adventure feels stifled, or our friends seem to be distancing themselves from us. We're not as able to commit to our community because things are not as accessible as they need to be for us to do that. Or we may feel challenged by roles or changing abilities or aging or even cognitive changes. Our faith may also be challenged by adversity, right? I think we can all agree that it's been a very stressful year, 2020. And so I think a lot of couples are feeling this, right? So I think the first step is, as Ross mentioned, start the conversation. You can't really fix the problem if we don't talk about it. Ross, is there anything that I'm leaving out?
No, but I was just thinking that given all that's happened in 2020, although my husband and I have this kind of conversation pretty often, we've had it a lot recently, just to check in with each other and to see what's stayed the same about our core values, but what has shifted with some of the pressures around us. So I love hearing your description of how this exercise could be helpful.
Yeah, definitely. So what are some next steps that you can take as a couple? Well, choose what value or what kind of thing you feel disconnected from, and use that as a starting point of what you like to start with. It might be important or helpful to think about nurturing what's going right, right? So watering the plants rather than pulling out the weeds. I see this a lot in work with couples where, we want to fix the relationship and we want to fix what's wrong. And there may be things that are going really well in the relationship, like, we have this chat every night before bed, and, we talk about our day, and that's, I really look forward to that. Okay, how can we nurture that further, right? Rather than, he didn't, put the dishes in the dishwasher, or, she's working too many hours, whatever it may be. Why don't we start by watering the plant? Take the time. It doesn't take that much time out of your day, 10, 15 minutes to talk about identifying and brainstorming solutions. And this is another piece where the toolkit might be helpful, since we have kind of a strategy on how to problem solve in conversation starters. Some of these conversations may not be the easiest to have, especially if both parties have been avoiding it, which is common. Think about how you might be able to do things differently. So for instance, going back to my adventure example, so maybe you're not as able to do rock climbing or hiking or camping as you used to do. What are some other ways that you can be adventurous? Well, you can be adventurous with food, you can be adventurous with hobbies, you can be adventurous with, driving out of town and going to a place and maybe socially distance, watch the sunset or something like that. So think about ways that you can be creative and flexible. The more flexible we can be with our challenges as they present themselves, the much better we are able to manage them and to cope with them and to be resilient to them, right? It's kind of like, I don't know if anyone's familiar with the finger traps that we kind of get our fingers stuck. And the more that we try and pull, the more stuck we get. This is a way to help us get us unstuck. So maybe you want to think about activities or projects that you might want to try for the first time together. So something that neither of you have done before, and that can kind of instill that sense of newness and adventure that we've been talking about. So I'll leave it to you now, Ross, to tell us a little bit more about how to balance the relationship, especially living with MS?
Sure. So there are a variety of ways that MS can tilt the teeter-totter in one direction or another and throw balance off. So certainly one of the most obvious is that sometimes one person who has MS can do less while the other person is taking on more and more, so that the responsibilities feel out of whack, out of balance. And I would remind people here that MS does this, but so does aging. And so for any couple, this conversation, with or without MS-related disability, can be very helpful. So just keep that in mind. One person feels like the receiver in the relationship, sort of getting all the goodies, the help, the nurturance, the support. And the other feels like the giver, constantly giving, supporting, helping, sometimes to the point of feeling pretty drained and tired. Sometimes, particularly when cognitive issues or depression, both of which we know are very, very common in MS, are interfering, one person begins to make more and more of the decisions. And this can be sort of a silent villain here. Suddenly it's crept up on you, and you realize that one person doesn't feel like a partner in the planning and the decision making and the prioritizing, or even some of the values that Sam was talking about. This can be kind of insidious, and so you want to pay careful attention to try and make sure that you're making those important decisions together. And one person can begin to feel more like a caregiver than a care partner or spouse. And it can do, we always talk about care partnerships because our goal for couples, whether they're young and starting out or aging with MS or dealing with a lot of MS challenges at whatever age, is that they maintain a partnership in which each person gives and receives. So here are some steps that you can use to try and restore that balance if you feel like it's lost. Make sure that you're acknowledging and capitalizing on each person's strengths. Everybody has strengths. Some people are more physically capable or more physically strong, while others may have problem-solving abilities or creativity or more communication skills. Try to identify what those skills and strengths are and use them. Make sure that you're addressing challenges and identifying solutions together. In the same way that Sam talked about doing this as a values discussion, you can also do it just in terms of everyday life, making sure that you're taking the time to have the conversations to figure it out together. And when you are successful, celebrate it. You know, I've worked with a lot of couples over the years, and they come in for couples therapy, and they're very quick to list all of the things that are wrong, just as Sam was mentioning, or all the problems or grievances that they have. And one of the questions I always ask is, what is it that attracts you to each other? What is it that you value in each other? What are the things you rely on each other? And those are part of your successes. They're part of your foundation, your roots. So you want to celebrate those as well as your daily successes with problem solving. Make sure you take the time to support each other emotionally. Both real and metaphorical pats on the back go a long way. And just acknowledging even small things that your partner does for you is a very, very intimate way of communicating. Express gratitude to each other about your lives, about the things that you have, that you value, and don't take anything for granted, which is what we're learning even more in 2020 than we've ever known it before. Acknowledge the things that are positive and wonderful, and be grateful for it. When you restore the balance, it really contributes to the feelings of trust you have between you and feelings of intimacy. And Sam and I also want to talk in today's conversation about how people can overcome challenges to physical intimacy. So we've talked a little bit already about emotional intimacy and values and trust and acknowledgement of each other. But let's talk about physical intimacy as well. It starts by being aware of the many ways that MS can impact sexual feelings and responses. And again, I'm going to say here as a reminder that while we're talking about MS and physical intimacy, keep in mind that aging causes many of these same problems, which can be confusing for couples who are getting into their 50s and 60s and 70s. Be sure to talk about the changes you're experiencing with your partner. And again, conversation starters can be very helpful, which is why we provide them. This is sometimes a difficult topic, but your partner cannot guess, no matter how much he or she loves you. We're not mind readers. So it's important to share when things feel different or are different. Bring the challenges to the attention of your healthcare providers. It doesn't always have to be your neurologist. Lord knows they may not be the best people to talk about physical intimacy with, but nurses can be wonderful. Physical therapists, many of whom specialize in pelvic floor PT, which can help with sexual function as well as with bladder function, so it's a twofer. And your primary care person. Also, mental health providers. Just make sure you're not keeping this important topic to yourselves. And most of all, be open and flexible and creative. Just like you are about every other aspect of your life with MS, you may need to do things differently. You may need to try new things. You may need to be adventurous, like Sam was talking about. And remember that the sharing together and talking and communicating is as important as the outcome. So let's look in a little more detail at the ways that MS can impact sexual feelings and responses. So there are 3 types of changes that we identify. The primary changes are caused directly by the disease process itself, lesions in the brain and the spinal cord, which actually cause sexual symptoms in the same way that those lesions cause any other types of symptoms of MS. So you can lose sensation. You can experience pain and numbness and tingling, only instead of in your fingers and toes and arms and legs, it could be in your vaginal area, in your penis, or just in the groin area generally. You may feel less aroused, less interested in sexual activity to begin with. You may be unable to achieve or maintain an erection, and you may have very reduced or non-existent vaginal lubrication because your body is not responding the way it used to. And you may have difficulty achieving orgasm, or it may just feel different. Those are the primary changes. The secondary changes are related to other MS symptoms or medications you're taking that add to some of the problems you're having. So, for example, if you have significant MS fatigue or pain or stiffness in your joints and your arms and legs, or you're having bladder and bowel changes, sex may not be at the top of your list of things that you find really appealing or enjoyable. So those symptoms are getting in the way. Also, medications like those that are prescribed for your overactive bladder can cause an extreme dry mouth, as well as contributing to vaginal dryness. And so it's just not as comfortable. Antidepressants can interfere with orgasm, and there are others as well. So if you have questions about whether any of the medications you're taking might be interfering, pharmacist is a great resource. They know it very well, and they're very easy to talk to. The tertiary changes are in some ways the most complicated, but the ones that Sam and I probably spend the most time dealing with when we're helping couples, because these are things related to feelings, to emotions, to negative brain chatter that we have going through our heads all the time. Like, I don't like my own body anymore. How can somebody else like it? Or how could anybody find me attractive if I have MS or I have a disability or I'm getting older? If you picture yourself differently, you worry that others will picture you differently. So those thoughts and attitudes can be really stumbling blocks to our own feelings of sexual interest or sexual pleasure. So the good news is that there are some management strategies. They're not ideal, but they are strategies that you want to talk over with your healthcare provider. If you're having a lot of change in sensation, pain, numbness, tingling, other discomfort, sometimes medications can be very helpful with sensation changes. Arousal is more difficult. There are some medications. So we know if we've watched any sporting events in the last 25 years, there are lots of medications available for men who are having erectile dysfunction. Women, there are fewer options to help with arousal, but there is a medication named Adya, which was approved in the last few years to help with female arousal. But it's mostly patience that is important, because sometimes while you don't start out feeling interested or aroused, with time, attention, foreplay, caressing, conversation, sexy atmosphere, sometimes your body can catch up. It just may take longer. So you need to use your imagination. Women need to use lots of vaginal lubricant. Somebody asked me, well, does that mean if I start to get dry, I jump up from the bed and go back to the bathroom and put on more? And I said, no. You take it into the bedroom, you keep it at arm's reach, you don't get up, you just keep adding it as you need it. And don't be bashful about it. It can become part of your sex play or your intimate activity. If there are problems with orgasm, it's very important to make sure that you're not overlooking other possible causes of a problem. So other health conditions can interfere. So it's very important to talk to your healthcare provider about this, just to make sure there's nothing else going on. But if it's neurologic, and if lesions are making orgasm difficult or impossible to achieve, it is okay to explore other options for physical pleasure and connection. Sometimes people discover they have parts of their bodies they didn't even know felt good until they spend some time exploring them and teaching their partner about them. Sometimes there are ways to achieve satisfaction and pleasure, even if we don't follow what some specialists in the area have called the stepladder approach to sex, which is you start at the bottom rung with foreplay, you climb up a few steps, you do a little more foreplay, and then, oh my Lord, you reach the top of the ladder and you have an orgasm. It doesn't have to be that way to be either fun or pleasurable, but you have to let yourself be okay with it being different. So give yourself permission first, and then explore and play and be creative. For the secondary changes caused by other MS symptoms or medications, obviously you want to talk about these with your healthcare team. Sometimes medication timing can be adjusted so that the medication interferes less with sexual activity. Sometimes you can learn other positions that can be helpful, even if you have a lot of spasticity going on. And you can talk to the nurse about bladder and bowel control and strategies that you can use so you don't have to worry about accidents. And of course, Sam and I want you to come talk to us if you're having problems in the tertiary change area. related to feelings, self-doubts, changes in self-image. Find a good mental health provider you feel comfortable with and explore some of those changes. Sam, I'm sure I'm missing some things. What would you like to add to this?
I think the only thing that I wanted to add is kind of expanding on what you were saying, is that this really challenges or helps us challenge what we know to be true, or what our beliefs about what sex means and what it is are for us. So I think coming in with an open mind, as you said, and exploring how sex can be a different experience than it used to be or what we expect it to be. I think it's our expectations and our beliefs that sometimes get us in trouble and keep us from experiencing something that can be so joyful and exciting and new, because we're hanging on to how things should be.
And again, it's good preparation for getting older. It just is, because that's what people have to do, is be creative. So Sam, can you share key takeaways?
Yeah, absolutely. So I know we covered a lot in this short time, but here's some things to kind of think about when you talk to your partner. MS, we know MS causes a shift in focus and our priorities, not just as individuals, but also within a couple. We know that values can serve as a compass for what's important to us, what brings our life meaning. We know that conflict is normal, and we know that shared core values help us maintain connection and commitment. Sexual feelings and function are commonly affected in MS. And you need to advocate for your sexual health with your healthcare team, because they're unlikely to bring it up. So talk about it. There may be a lot of barriers that they're trying to work around. And this is not a routine question, I think, in a lot of MS centers or neurology practices. So ask about it. And as I mentioned before, the toolkit has a lot of great conversation starters that you can use with your healthcare team if you don't know how to bring this up to them, to help you get started.
And if they appear flustered, which they might, at a big MS center, they're likely to ask as a rule, they're likely to bring it up, but in other places they're not. But you can ask for a special appointment just to talk about it. It's not going to fit easily into your 10 or 12 minute neurology appointment. It's absolutely okay to say, I would like to schedule a special time to come, with more relaxed time, to come in and talk about this, because it's really important to us as a couple.
Yeah.
Great. We have some good recommended resources for you. You'll find them in the toolkit, but I urge all of you to look at the National MS Society brochure on intimacy and sexuality. It's free and easy to download from their website. On the Can Do website, there is a webinar that you can look at, and other resources and articles. But these books are also excellent and easy to get on Amazon. So I urge you to look. And Eve's Garden is, it's been around a very long time. It's a very reputable mail order catalog and sexuality boutique. They are use discretion. If you call their business, they have knowledgeable people who can actually make good recommendations to you. And there's nothing smarmy or unpleasant about interacting with them. So please check out Eve's Garden online. Thank you very much for joining us today. And it was great, as always, to work with you, Sam. I always enjoy it.
Likewise. Thank you all.
Thank you to both Sam and Roz for being here, and thank you to all of you for joining us. Lastly, I would also like to thank our generous sponsors for their support of this program.